This is CaneSport ITL on the Ourlads Football Network as we talk Miami Hurricanes football, and it's Clemson Tigers Week. And that means we introduce our special guest this week, Phil Kornblut, who covers South Carolina sports talk and has been doing it for 36 years on the Sports Talk Radio Network at Sports Talk SC. That's at Sports Talk SC on Twitter. Joining me and Gary Ferman. Phil, nice to talk to you again. You've done this for the last few years here on our network, and you've always been great. So it was a perfect week to have you on.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I always enjoy being with you guys. And, yeah, it's a great week. It's an exciting week with what looks like, Clemson fans, as much as they enjoy the dominance of their team, they need a good matchup every once in a while just to get the juices flowing, and I think this will be that game.
And what do you think about that, Gary? Because before we get into asking Phil questions, I do have to start the show because we haven't talked, Phil, Gary, and I, since Miami's blowout win over Florida State. So I got to imagine that the fan base down there is pretty stoked for this one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this was a late add to the schedule due to the coronavirus. And when they put this on, I mean, I personally was really excited because – I love measurement games, and I love to find out exactly where the Miami program is and how good it might be or where it might still be lacking. And I don't think that anybody really was able to get a true read out of the first three games. We know they're vastly improved. We know Rhett Lashley, as the offensive coordinator, has made a massive difference in this program in transforming Miami football. We know they've had a national stage now. This is going to be the third time in 4 games that they're on primetime ABC, which is absolutely astonishing when you look at where they're coming from at the end of last season. So it is nothing but a festival of happiness down here in South Florida. And to be able to go up to Clemson and play a program that for 9 years now has just been the prototype, not just in the ACC, but right there with the Bamas of the world in college football. I think it's the perfect time, the perfect moment for Miami to go up there and just see where they are as a program right now.
All right, let's get the ball rolling with Phil. We have about 15 minutes or so with Phil. So, all right, let's start. Might as well at the top. Trevor Lawrence, career 65% completion percentage coming into the season, 73% this season. No picks, 7 touchdowns. He got off to a shaky start last season. He's a little bit older. He's obviously going to be the first pick in next year's draft. What's the difference that you're seeing in Trevor Lawrence so far this season than seasons before?
Well, it's pretty obvious he's worked on some mechanical things in the offseason with his feet and just perhaps a little thing here or there just to perfect what he already had, which was near perfection. And, being a year older, last year a sophomore after the great freshman year when they won the national championship, he probably felt early on that he was Superman and he could throw a football anywhere he wanted to, and it would only go to his guys. And he threw some early picks, and, of course, now he's on a long streak of no interceptions. He just looks very sharp, very comfortable. Obviously, the game has slowed way down for him. He's in complete control out there, and you can't forget his legs as well. I mean, Clemson will use him a lot in the running game. People don't expect that from a guy who's that tall, but he runs very well and he runs very hard. He is not afraid to run. So you got to think about that as well. That's really what keeps defenses on their toes in dealing with Trevor Lawrence. You have to respect the arm, but you can't just let your eyes get off of him and let him run free because he will beat you with his legs.
I actually think that.
Well, let me just I'll throw one thing in there really quick that he is Superman. Okay. We saw him a couple years ago at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge when he was a high school quarterback. And I mean, I was in awe from the first time I saw him throw a ball. And I came back the next day, and I happened to see Mark Richt at another event. And I said, Mark, you have no idea what's coming down the pike here at Clemson. They got this quarterback coming in by the name of Trevor Lawrence. And, he's as good as a high school quarterback as I've ever seen in 40-plus years of doing this. So, and he certainly has not disappointed since he arrived at Clemson. And this will be the last year they have him. But, man, I hope all you guys up there in South Carolina just totally appreciate what you got there because, I mean, the kid is obviously really special.
Yeah, you're exactly right. To stand next to him when I first got a chance to stand next to him when he was a freshman. I mean, first of all, he's 6'5", he's chiseled. I refer to him as a Greek god because he's got the long hair and the high cheekbones and not a mark on him, and that just, he carries himself extremely well. He's been mature since day one, and now he has made himself into the voice and the face of college football this year, and it's something that he didn't just stumble into. I think it's something he really wanted with all the social activities that the college athletes have taken up here in the offseason and into the season. He did not shy away from that. He's not at all afraid of the limelight or the responsibility of being that guy. So mature beyond his years, tremendous athletic gifts, very smart, and a talented team around him. I mean, look, he misses Justin Ross probably a little bit. You don't lose a player like that for the year and not feel it. And then he's had other receivers kind of in and out because of COVID or injuries. But they're as healthy now as they have been since preseason camp. And some of the receivers are starting to come on. Some of the young guys like Frank Latson, Joseph Nagata. Of course, Rogers is a mainstay. You know what you're going to get with him. And their tight end, Galloway, is a big weapon for them as well. So he's – and out of the backfield, Travis Etienne is an excellent receiver too. So he still has the weapons with which to distribute the football.
Yeah, that's the name you brought up last, Phil, and that's Travis Etienne. Because Lawrence is this once-in-a-generation quarterback that comes out of a school, and maybe it's twice with Deshaun Watson. That's another question a little bit later on. But Etienne is such a dynamic running back that all the attention will be on Lawrence at the draft. But Travis Etienne might be the most talented running back that I've seen in the draft in several years because of his receiving ability, which is so important at this at today's game in the NFL. And I just think that he is going to have a fantastic pro career.
See no reason why he won't. I mean, even if he goes to the Jets, as pitiful as they are.
Hey, now, that's my team.
I'm sorry. But,
that's where Trevor's going.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're talking about Travis now. Yeah, Travis. Well, wherever Travis ends up, right, he should be a star as well. I haven't seen a running back with his kind of explosiveness. I mean, I'm sure there have been some,
sure,
but I mean, his ability to go from 0 to 60 is really incredible. He has improved other aspects. That's why he came back. He wanted to further improve other aspects of his game, like picking up the blitz, like receiving out of the backfield, and he has done that. We already knew he could run the football with the best. And Clemson's been very judicious with its use of him because they're loaded at running back and they've had so many blowout games. I mean, if he gets 20 carries in a game, that's an achievement. He seldom is above 15 carries. So the wear and tear on a 4-year college running back on him will not be like it is on another running back out of another program. Yeah, he won't have that wear and tear on the body. He's still got a lot of miles left in those legs.
Gary?
Well, I mean, Phil, when I look at Clemson, the first thing that comes to my mind is their consistency. I mean, 9 straight years of 10 or more wins. I mean, I've seen, Miami when it's been at its greatest through the years multiple times. But doing that for 9 straight years is just unbelievable. And, it looks to me like what happened was they made a decision. They're sitting there in South Carolina. They're in the middle of SEC country. They're surrounded by SEC schools. And Clemson decided we are going to model our program after an SEC school. And in every single way, they got better coaches. They started recruiting better players, so forth and so on. But from your viewpoint, being in the middle of it there, what do you think has allowed them to sustain like this and achieve like this?
Well, when Dabo Swinney took over, he made the comment at his initial press conference, I think it was, where he said his goal was to make, like everybody was saying back then, you want to be like Notre Dame. You want to be like Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, way Miami was. You want to have programs that win like that. He said his stated goal was to make programs want to be like Clemson. And over time, I think he has made Clemson the model program, and he is the model head coach. He's a great spokesman. He's a great delegator of authority. He's a guy with a plan and an overseer, and he does not, while other coaches might follow the lead of things other people are doing, Dabo marches to his own beat. He won't recruit junior college players. He won't offer anybody. They send out very few offers. Now, part of that's because of the level they've reached. They can be choosy, because they've got players. They turn away players who want to come. Good players, 4- and 5-star players, they have backed away from because they didn't think it was the right fit, or they had somebody else in mind that they wanted. So they've become choosy because they became winners. But they became winners because they recruited well. He maintained his coaching staff. He built a loyal support group. One thing he has done is surrounded himself with people in his football and personal life, and also people who have ties to Clemson. And that gives you loyalty. That gives you somebody who's got your back. And you notice that there's very little turnover inside and outside of Clemson. Occasionally they have a guy retire. They had an assistant coach leave for the NFL. Seldom do they leave for another coaching job in college because they're well paid. They love the atmosphere at Clemson. Young coaches with families love the idea of raising their kids in a small town environment like Clemson. And besides all that, and the winning, and the money they make, and the facilities they have, let's face it, I like to say that Clemson lives in Beverly Hills. It's a very soft neighborhood because ACC football has just been poor the last 4 or 5 years, ever since Florida State fell off the ledge, and ever since Miami joined the league and then dropped down a bit. There has been no real challenger. I mean, Louisville popped up with Lamar, but they couldn't beat Clemson. And Virginia Tech here and there. There's been no consistent threat. Now, maybe we're seeing it with Miami. Maybe we're seeing it with North Carolina. We shall see what happens down the road. But they've just had a very cushy existence. They are an SEC-level power in the ACC. And that's a great place to be if you're Dabo Swinney. Why would you need to go anywhere else? You're making $9+ million a year. You've got a 20, don't hold me to this, about a 26,000 square foot house 1 mile from campus.
Sweet.
Yeah, and it's pretty beautiful up there too. I mean, and I laugh when people say he's going to go to Alabama. Why would he go to Alabama? But Alabama, it's like, why would he leave what he has there at Clemson? I can't envision that happening. But down here in Miami, it's been an interesting situation because Mark Richt retired. There was not a coaching search. The athletic director went right to Manny Diaz, and when you go 6 and 7 out of the gate like they did last year, and you lose to FIU and Duke and Louisiana Tech to end the season, myself and a lot of other people are sitting there saying, "What the heck?" Why wasn't there a coaching search? Why didn't Miami go out and get the best guy? And the response that you always get, and it has caught a little bit of fire with the fan base to a degree, is maybe Manny Diaz is Miami's Dabo Swinney. And Dabo struggled his first few years. It did not look like he was going to be the guy that was going to be able to turn around Clemson. And then they got him, Chad Morris, to remake the offense, who's a very high-quality offensive coordinator. And then, of course, they go get Venables, who's as good as any defensive coordinator in the country. And now he's got elite coaching around them. And they built the coaching staff from there. And now he's sitting here. He's got 9 straight 10-win seasons. He's playing for the national title almost every year. It's the model program in college football. And, people in Miami are now hoping that Manny Diaz could do the same thing. So, which leads us to Saturday night, and it's an extremely big night for Manny Diaz because obviously Miami right now is the coronavirus came, which has helped them enormously in recruiting. All these kids in South Florida, many of whom have been leaving, through the past several years. They can't take visits anymore, Phil. They can't go anywhere. The other coaches aren't able to come into South Florida and recruit them. So Miami has seized the moment, so to speak, and is dominating South Florida recruiting this year. So, they're in decent shape with their recruiting class for this year. Now, as you know, being up there, you have to build on these things. You don't turn a program around with one recruiting class. You got to stack them together, and that's what Clemson has been able to do. So this is a huge, huge moment for Miami on Saturday night, to prove that they are taking forward steps, to prove that they aren't still totally outclassed by a team like Clemson. I don't think they need to win the game. I really don't. I think they need to go up there and be a respectable opponent and play a respectable college football game against the team that everybody considers the best team in the country. And if they're able to do that, I think it will catapult them throughout the state of Florida and maybe even beyond as they go into the 2022 recruiting cycle.
Well, let me say this. I think you're exactly right in terms of measuring where you are early in this season with this team. One thing that they were able to do, of course, was bring in some transfers who immediately improved the team. Quarterback, defensive end, place kicker, very smart in using the transfer portal. And so they're obviously, with De'Aaron King and those running backs, those tight ends, those receivers, this is the most dangerous team to visit Death Valley since that Louisville team a couple of years. Clemson had to make a tackle at about the 2-yard line to beat. Lamar Jackson moved them down the field. It took a great play by Marcus Edmond to save that game for Clemson, or they would have gone down to defeat. This game might very well come right down to it. So I think that I'm an outsider. I'm far away. I like Manny Diaz. I thought he was good at Georgia, and it looks like he's doing a lot of good things at Miami. To judge your team, if you lose and you lose by a couple of touchdowns to Clemson in Death Valley, I don't think that should be held against him. It is, of course, a break that you don't have to deal with the 80,000 plus. Clemson players really thrive off the emotion of the crowd, as a lot of teams do, but they in particular thrive. They're driven by their fans, and they'll do the best job they can. 20,000 won't make the noise of 80,000. It doesn't have the ambiance. It doesn't have the buzz. They'll do the best they can to get that feel. But that's a break for the visiting team, no question about it. I look for this to be, I would certainly take Miami in the points if I were a gambling guy, which, I play my $25 every weekend and end up with about 50 cents. But this is a game where I think the spread's a bit strong. I think it's more like a 7-point game than, what is it, about a 13, 14-point thing now?
Yes.
So
that's respect, though. That's Clemson respect.
Yeah, I'm sure. Looking at Miami, I've watched some of the game against Louisville. They just look a lot like Miami of old. Now, defensively, I don't know that they have, and you're going to be without your starting safety for the first half. I don't know that they are a great total defensive team yet. And the thing about Venables is he's at his best when he's facing that huge offensive challenge for Clemson. He comes up with a plan that seems to stymie most of the teams that they face. So this will be a great chess match between the Miami offense and Venables and what he can dial up. Defensively, Clemson has been really good. They are getting Tyler Davis back, their big nose tackle. That's a plus for them. He'll solidify the middle. They got a couple of young bucks on that defensive front. Brian Bresee, number 1 player in the country last year. Miles Murphy, about the number 3 or 4 player in the country. They've been outstanding so far. Got great depth there. Dabo feels as good about his corners as he ever had. Feels like he's got more corners than they've ever had. And their safeties are 1 newbie and 1 veteran. So, but they're both good players. But I imagine that King's going to take his shots. And I think the key's going to be, how is Venables going to defend King and shut off the running lanes and not make him a dual threat, try to make him into a single threat. If he can do that, that will work in Clemson's favor.
Well, before we get away from you here, I do want to know one thing, and that is, who the heck is counting tickets up there? There is no way in hell that there's going to be 20,000 people in that stadium. I turned on the TV on Saturday night, and I'm watching them play Virginia, and I'm saying, Jesus, this 80,000 seat stadium looks like it's like half to 2/3 full. There is no way they're limiting that crowd to 20,000. And if they didn't do it against Virginia, they sure as heck aren't doing it against Miami on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there. I was in Gainesville coming back from the South Carolina-Florida game. I covered that last weekend. And, I mean, I'm like, what they've done is they've put the seat backs in pods. And they've taken that and they've run those pods up the stairways of the stadium. So you see that throughout the stadium. And that's for the boosters. And then they've taken the students and they're making the students sit upstairs in a closed off section. They don't want the students mingling with anybody because they know the students. Yeah. So they've taken their students and put them in the upper deck by themselves. And they're giving them about 2,500 tickets or so, I think. Then they've taken their band and they've put their band on the hill and they've spread the band out on the hill. The band fills up the hill. No fans, but the band. So that's how they're doing it. Clemson is never short of ideas, never short of creativity. You roll out a situation for them, they come up with a way to make the most of it. So,
well, the athletic director is a Miami guy.
Oh yeah, Dan. I know Dan well.
Yeah, he went to business. He went to business school at Miami. Actually, at the same time I was at Miami, so I know Dan pretty well. And you're absolutely right. Absolutely brilliant athletic director. I'm sure he's surrounded himself with great people. I used to hope, that maybe one day he would end up back at Miami. I just think that highly of him. But I'm sure what you're saying is true, that they do come up with a lot of creativity and a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, I mean, they're still doing the bus ride from the locker room around to the top of the hill, and they're doing that. I mean, I guess it doesn't have the same feeling when you've got the hill crowded with fans, but they do have the band there to kind of create the corridor for running down the hill. But like Dabo said, when he runs down the hill, there's no one there to greet him. He's used to having the band on the field and other people on the sideline. He's running down the hill and there's like nobody there. But again, they're doing the best they can to recreate the home field advantage.
Has he ever tripped?
He's never tripped. I have seen a Clemson player before, this is a few years ago, come down the hill and trip and hurt his ankle and couldn't play in the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because he sprained his ankle coming down the hill. It hasn't happened much, but it can happen. I mean, these guys, the brave ones, they just don't run down the hill. See, the hill has a couple of flat spots, and what they do is they hit the flat spots and then they jump and they go on down the hill like with a leap. The Braves one do. Your athletic type receivers, quarterbacks, you don't see the linemen do that very much. They're just trying to tenderfoot it down the hill.
Trying to survive. Yeah, that's pretty steep.
Yeah. All right, Phil, before I let you go, quickly, some other questions. Dixon, the number 2 running back, why is he off to a slow start?
He, let me think. I think he had a little bit of an injury situation early, so he did not play in the
opener.
Which game was it? Yeah, I think it was the opener. So I think that held him back some. And I mean, then you got ETN getting the bulk of the carries, and then they went, even against the Citadel, they went through every running back they had on the roster.
Okay.
Malusi got out there
so
some. Dukes got out there some. Bowman got out there some before he transferred. So it's nothing against Lynn J. Dixon. They like him a lot. He's a solid number 2 running back.
Okay. Baylon Specter came into the season with 52 career tackles, I believe. He's got 21 to lead the team. Where's he come from?
Well, he's a grad student, I believe. He's been there the whole time. He's just waited his time. Clemson's been so good at linebacker. He wears that number 10 that Boulware used to wear and kind of plays like him. He's just a heat-seeking missile. His brother is a receiver on the other side who's a big player for him, wearing number 13, and has become a big-time player. You look at Clemson stats, and if you had asked a Clemson fan before the season how surprised you would be to see Specter and Reagan Upshaw among your leading tacklers. They would have said, quite surprising. But, Swinney likes to talk about player development, and Clemson prides itself on taking some players that others overlook, maybe invited walk-ons or lowly recruited players, and developing them over time, because he believes football is a player development game, and over time, making them into players who will contribute when their time comes. And this has been the case here. The opportunity arose. They lost some players at linebacker, and now he's got a chance to play, and he's doing a heck of a job.
What does it tell us when the team has 13 sacks, 10 players have at least one each? I mean, that's crazy.
Depth. It's just depth. They just have great depth. They rotate so many players in and out. I mean, defensive end, and they're playing without two. Their regular starting defensive ends have not played. Xavier Thomas and Justin Foster. They would be your starting defensive ends, but Thomas had a bout of COVID and strep throat, got way overweight, and is trying to work his way back into shape. And Foster's been dealing with an undisclosed issue and has got to go through protocol, is all we can get on that. So he's been out, no telling when he'll return. So that's why you've seen KJ Henry. That's why you've seen Justin Maskell. That's why you've seen Miles Murphy at defensive end really step up. And then Bresci, of course, from day one has just been a man inside on the defensive front. You got Niles Pinckney. You've got Tyler Davis returning. They are deep. They are talented. They are loaded on that defensive line.
I noticed that Dabo was not happy with the fundamentals defensively, space tackling. That was something that he spoke about this past week, considering Miami's got some big time playmakers on this team that we've seen so far this year. Could that be a big time problem for Clemson if they continue that sort of, liability coverage as far as tackling, back there in the secondary or anywhere really?
Oh, absolutely. Especially against this team with the players Miami's got. My gosh. I mean, if Clemson defensive coaches, Venables and Swinney, they like to talk about eyes, making sure the eyes are in the right spot. And that's why corralling King will be so important, because if you're in the secondary and you've got your eyes on King, then one thing I noticed, they love to throw to the backs out of the backfield. And those backs, Harris, Knighton, Chaney, they can all go the distance in a heartbeat. So tackling in space is going to be very important, because Miami's running backs are going to be in space, and those receivers are going to be in space. It's going to be a real challenge for Clemson's strong safety and linebackers covering those two tight ends. This is why I'm telling people who listen, of course, nobody listens to me, but if they listen, this is the greatest challenge to Clemson in a long, long time, a true challenge, not even greater than the teams they've played in the ACC championship game. I mean, they've mauled everybody there. North Carolina, Virginia, Miami a few years ago, Virginia Tech. Nobody's been able to match them in the championship game, even make it a game. And seldom has it happened in the regular season the last few years. But this will be, if this is more than a touchdown difference between these two teams, I will be shocked.
I think it's the scheme on offense that's been brought in that fits so perfectly with the personnel when you bring in tandem the quarterback, De'Ara King. Let's be honest, without that kid, this offense is not looking the way it is. There's no question about it. So it's been the perfect storm for Miami. And I agree with you, Phil. I do think that because of their ability to score, that they do have a chance to stay in this ball game on Saturday night. And I also believe that the spread might be too high at 2 touchdowns.
That's what I think.
But Clemson's explosive, though. So they could be, if it could be a 13.5 point spread, they could be up 7, close game, boom, one big play, they cover the spread by half point.
Yeah, I'm not confident in Miami's ability to stop them either, Greg. I mean,
I know.
I'll be honest with you, like they have a lot of weapons. And this Trevor Lawrence kid, he could fit balls into windows that like you don't see college kids in many cases able to do. I mean, you see it rarely. Like last year, I think Joe Burrow was playing at that level. But there's usually 1 or 2 guys a year that can throw the ball the way this kid can.
Yeah, I got to kick Phil and a couple of writers from New York covering the Jets were posing questions. Well, what should the Jets do if they end up with the first pick? That's a tough question. And it's like, I know a lot of Jet fans are just laughing at that. What are you talking about, a tough question? There's no tough question. No Sam Darnold will be wearing another jersey in 2021. That's what that answers that question.
Correct. You trade him before the draft, even, possibly.
So that's what Jet fans are hoping for. Last question, Lawrence Watson. Yeah. Just talking Clemson quarterback, not pro and all that. Who would you like to see there in a big game spot?
I mean, that's like asking, which of your two kids do you like the most?
I know. Tough one.
If you're a Clemson person, a Clemson fan, you love them both. I don't know. I mean, they both can beat you with their arm. They both can beat you with their leg. They both can beat you with their savvy, their leadership, their drive. I think you take one, they're both 1A. I don't know how you pick one over the other. I mean, they both have won national championships. I can't believe so many teams passed on Deshaun Watson in the draft. That was one of the most incredible oversights since Aaron Rodgers. How you let that guy last as long as he did was beyond me for all the teams that needed quarterbacks that year. And of course, Lawrence is not going to be passed over by anybody. No. Lawrence is looked at as that prototypical quarterback.
Yes.
Tall, big arms, stand in the pocket, blah, blah, blah.
Athletic.
And Deshaun is making himself into that, yet he still maintains that threat as a running quarterback. So, man, I'm going to pass on that one.
All right.
I couldn't take one. I couldn't take one over the other because they're both. Deshaun Watson did things that we never saw before. Trevor Lawrence has done things that we've never seen before. And Clemson's got one coming up next year, DJ Uiagalelei, who will also be probably the number one pick in the draft. So, I mean, they've got three. You talk about, and that's why when you said earlier about a generational quarterback in Deshaun Watson, they've got three generational quarterbacks in succession. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And we're waiting to see who they're going to pick for 22. That's the next question. Who they're going to – part of the problem they've had, if it's been a problem, is, in their 21 class, they kind of had to take a step down in quarterback recruiting because nobody wants to come in and sit behind these guys. They've had 5-star quarterbacks transfer out of the program because they couldn't get playing time. So they've just been so flush with quarterback talent. And so Dabo's got and quarterbacks, of course, attract the top skilled players in the country. That's how Clemson can go to California and get Nagata. And they got Bo Collins, top receiver in California, coming in this class. It's how they can go down to Miami and get Frank Ladson, or go into Knoxville and get Amari Rodgers, right from under Tennessee's nose. These quarterbacks, they attract these great players. Justin Ross, who came right from down the street from Auburn, or T. Higgins, who came right outside of Knoxville. Clemson has no
people
fear.
Don't realize they're not. It's not like they're getting all their players in South Carolina. This is a school that's recruiting all over the country. Yeah. And to me, when you talk about Clemson being the prototype for Miami, that right there is what I think is the prototype for Miami. Yes, you want the best from South Florida, without question, every single year, but you got to be able to go get those elite players from other areas, and that's why Clemson has been great for 9 years.
Exactly. I mean, Clemson now is a national brand. Miami remains a national brand. Even though they've fallen on some hard times, Miami is still a national brand. Clemson is now a national brand and can go anywhere into anybody's backyard. I mean, their left tackles from Ohio, a guy that Ohio State wanted badly. Their left guard, let me think. Their right guard is from Tampa, Putnam, a guy that the Florida schools wanted. Their left guard is from Ohio, another guy that bolted. I mean, just throughout their lineup, they've got play. LSU came in late on ETN. It was too late. They kind of thought they had him because he's a Louisiana kid, and Clemson went in there and got him. Now his brother, who's a big timer, whose name is Trevor Trevor Etienne. Clemson has already offered him, but LSU's jumped on him early as well. Not going to make the same mistake twice. Clemson's recruiting prowess is second to none right now. Second to none.
Yeah, and the kids they get don't decommit either.
Not usually. I mean, Bowman transferred out last week, as you know, and that was a rarity. He had some family things. Had a grandfather who lived in Atlanta, which is a reason he picked Clemson, who passed away. So he kind of felt like he needed to get back home, and now he's going to Florida. So, Clemson, you miss a talent like that, but they've just got another one waiting in the line to step up and be the next guy.
All right, Phil, at Sports Talk SC. That's where you can find out about Phil and his work on Twitter. Again, over 36 years covering sports talk and football in South Carolina. And I think this is about year 3 here on the Ourlads Football Network, and we appreciate it every time you come on, Phil, and hopefully we'll talk to you again around playoff time.
Anytime, my friends. I appreciate you.
Take care, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so that's Phil Kornblut, and you could just X out whenever you want there, Phil. And
okay, thank you, guys.
Take care, Phil. And
bye.
We have a lot to finish up with here, Gary, regarding the numbers, of course. Because we always want to go inside the numbers for all the games and the trends and everything else. I tell you what, I'm gonna answer that question, by the way, Gary, that I posed to Phil. I would take Deshaun, and look, he's exactly right. It's splitting hairs. But if you have to make a decision, I would take Deshaun Watson in the college big game, and I do think Trevor Lawrence is going to end up as a better pro. But again, it's a little bit, but I would take Deshaun Watson.
Well, I think you got to give Trevor the rest of the season. If he takes them back into the playoffs and they play for the national title again, I don't see how he comes in second to anybody. This kid is that special.
Oh,
I mean, I'm telling you, I stood maybe 5 yards away from him and watched him throw. And I know I've never seen anything like it since I watched Dan Marino at the Miami Dolphins, to be honest with you. I mean, this kid's got so much talent. And so Deshaun Watson gets an enormous amount of credit, I think, just because of what he meant to Clemson and how he put Clemson on the map. But I think by the time he's done this year, unless Miami can derail him on Saturday night, that Trevor Lawrence will be right there with anybody that's ever played at that school.
Yeah, I think the tiebreaker for me, again, and you're right, is that let's see what happens this year. Let's see what happens in the playoffs again. What does Trevor Lawrence do? Does he get a chance in a big spot to come up with big plays at the end, win another championship? Then maybe you're right. Then I'll say, okay, now I have to reevaluate. But as of right now, Deshaun Watson made so many big plays at big moments. And let's not forget, not only was it the beginning of Clemson trying to win championships, but they did it against an incredibly talented Alabama team. Back-to-back years, the competition between those two schools was incredible. And he was able to find a way to get it done with seconds to go in that championship game. And that's the reason right now why I have him ahead. But like you said, we still have one more season for Trevor.
Yeah, and it obviously helps all these guys to have all the talent around them that they have. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you look just at Etienne alone. I mean, how many teams have the two elite guys?
He's incredible.
On one team.
He's being forgotten. That's why I opened the show with it. He is going to be a forgotten player. He is so talented.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he was the number 2 pick in the draft behind Trevor. And, the thing that just I find awe-inspiring about these guys, I mean, you start with 9 straight seasons of 10 or more wins. That's impressive enough. But they're coming into this game with a 32-game regular season win streak, Greg. They've won 24 straight games in the ACC, outscoring their opponents by 32.4 points in those games. I mean, that's ridiculous. They typically have been outgaining their ACC opponents by 252 yards. They have 3 wins by 50-plus points in that streak. I mean, this is a Herculean challenge for Miami on Saturday night. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I love it. I love every minute of it. I hate garbage games. I said at the beginning of the year, Greg, I think I said it on this show also, that when they opened the season against UAB, to me, that was the smartest thing I've seen at Miami in a long time, because usually you open with like a Bethune-Cookman, a FAMU, a blowout victory, and everybody in college football thinks that that's like such a great thing. I don't think it's a great thing. I don't think you get anything out of those games. And I think a huge reason why Miami looked so good against Louisville and so good against Florida State was that they were tested at the beginning of the year. They had to respond. UAB pulled to within 3 points in the third quarter, and they had to take it to another level, and they were able to do it. And I hardened them for Louisville, and it hardened them for Florida State, and that's why I think they won those 2 games convincingly.
And again, we didn't have a time to talk about the Florida State game, but that was wow, just an unbelievably dominating performance for the rivalry. There were too many, which was expected, and it's interesting. Phil brought up the fact that one of the starters is going to be at least out for a half for Miami. So there were a lot of hits and flags, and I get it. We know that's going to happen in that rivalry, but that was an ass whipping. And
yeah, well, I mean, they're not very good.
No, they're not.
And Miami,
not right
of course, they're always going to be motivated for that game. And you put the 2 together, and yeah, it was an absolute blowout. But Florida State's in a really bad situation right now.
Yeah, it's gonna. That's what we talked about last week. It's a couple weeks ago. Norvell needs at least a couple of recruiting cycles. He's sort of in the same.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard. It's going to be so hard for him to do it because. Where's their opening? Miami right now is dominating the southern part of the state, and Florida State can't even come down there. Then they got to deal with Florida, which is, going to be a top 5 team all year, probably might even make the playoffs. And Florida's got it all going now. Where's the opening for Florida State? You got the SEC schools coming down into Florida. They're in a challenged situation right now. So you might see Florida State football down for a little bit here.
As far as inside the numbers, Miami has covered 5 straight away games following a double-digit against the spread win versus a conference opponent. That's one of those little, cutesy
like
trends. Manny Diaz, though, this is something that we've talked about already. 2-0 straight up and against the spread as a road dog, and under Diaz, they've covered all 3 as a dog. This is only the 4th time they've been a dog under Manny Diaz. First time this season, he's covered all 3. So that's promising as well. Clemson's 0-2 against the spread this year. So you got Miami 3-0 against the spread, Clemson 0-2 against the spread. You got a 14-point number. And that's why I said that I can see Clemson covering, because I'm not going to pick them to cover. I am taking Miami, but because they're so explosive, both teams are so explosive that it could be a tight game until 5 minutes to go, and then boom, boom, couple of plays here and there, and Clemson's covering.
It's going to be a tough assignment for Miami's defense. I don't think there's any question about it. I'm still concerned about the defensive tackle position. I don't feel they're very strong up the middle. I have not liked what I've seen from the linebackers at all. I don't feel the cornerbacks have been tested to the degree that they're going to be tested on Saturday night. Yep. I don't expect Gervin Hall sitting out the first half to have a major effect. They've still got Bubba Bolden and Amari Carter, who are, 2 very capable safeties. But, I think that there's a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball for Miami. And, they're going against the best on Saturday on the road. And, Miami has not beaten a number 1 team on the road. Here's a little trend for you. Since November 16th, 1991.
Wow.
When they won at FSU. Yeah, and the last time they beat a number 1 team, even at home, was 20 years ago when they beat Florida State as well at home. So, are they due? Maybe. You look at it that way. But I still say that the measurement for Miami in this game is being competitive.
Yes, absolutely.
And that to me, that's what I'm looking for. I think Manny Diaz has earned the benefit of the doubt here, just with his last 10 months. It was looking pretty bleak when they walked out of Shreveport in December, and we won't go through all the moves he made in rapid fire succession after that. But that was an impressive offseason that he put together. And, I think he bought the benefit of the doubt in showing that he was able to do that. And I don't think that he can be judged on this game, but I do think Miami will be better than a lot of people think. I do think they have a chance to, cover the spread if things go well in the ball game. But if it doesn't go well, I don't think people should just totally start abandoning ship either. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape for most of the season. I don't see a whole lot in the ACC. No. I don't see a lot of defenses, Greg, that are going to be able to withstand the pressure that this offensive system with these athletes puts on them. And I think we're going to be sitting there looking at a Miami team in December that, regardless of what happens on Saturday night, is going to have at least 9 and maybe 10 victories.
I think unless they just turn the ball over incredibly, 4 turnovers, 5 turnovers, that kind of stuff, this is going to be a 4-quarter football game. Both teams have explosive playmakers on offense. We're talking college football. We're not talking who are the better pro prospects. This is a college football game. This is different. But defensively, that's where Clemson has the edge. We know that. But it's not so much so that Miami still can't score points. And that's why I think this is going to be a 4-quarter, in the 30s kind of game. Who's going to make the big plays at the right time? Let's not forget, Clemson's already, even though they haven't lost in a while to ACC teams, they have lost 2 games when they were a 22 and a 24-point favorite at Syracuse versus Pitt. So it can happen. I've seen crazier things happen. Miami is a rising program, and I just look 4-1 on the money line. I'm putting a few bucks on the money line. I mean, I'm not doing it thinking it's pot luck. I'm doing it because I think Miami has a shot. I really do.
Yeah, if things bounce their way, they absolutely do have a shot. If they can get a few turnovers, if Clemson's not on top of their game. The only thing about Clemson is in games like this where they recognize.
They don't fall asleep to Miami. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're too well coached. Like they usually show up. They don't win every single time, when they're in the playoff and things like that. But they very rarely don't show up.
Well, the Miami big players are going to have to play their best. That's it. King, and I mean they're going to have to all across the board. Even Roche on defense is going to have to have a monster game. If everybody can do that, you never know, and that would be incredible. And what's the schedule look like next week? What do we got?
They got Pittsburgh after this one, so which is not a layup.
Where's that one?
Pittsburgh is. It'll be in Hard Rock Stadium, and that's not a layup.
No.
You
not a layup. Yeah, I mean Miami fans remember Pittsburgh a couple years ago.
Yeah, and very well coached, and they
Same
have
quarterback.
A decent defense. Yep, they got a veteran quarterback now who, has his moments. So, they'll have to make sure next week that they don't have a letdown in that game, regardless of what happens. But let's deal with that next week. I mean, like right now, this is a great moment for Miami football. A 3rd time on national TV, a 3rd time on game day. Miami is relevant again in college football, and for anybody that wants to see the Hurricanes do well, you couldn't possibly have asked for any more than this during the offseason.
Gary, appreciate it, and good luck on Saturday night. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday.
All right, Greg, always a pleasure.